Welcome to Ciao Bella, hosted by me, Erica Firpo, a travel journalist based in Rome. Each episode of Ciao Bella, I sit down with Italy's creators, contemporary artists and artisans, designers, culinary experts, heritage brands, and innovative aesthetes, and more who are defining and redefining 21st century Italy. Pull up a chair and join in. Hey, Ciao Bella listeners. In this episode, I'm at the very tip of Puglia at Castello di Ugento, a centuries-old castle where I meet up with owners Massimo d'Amore and Diana Bianchi. This is a pretty fun interview because sometimes I'm in the garden with Diana, other times Diana and Massimo and I are in the base of a tower. So listen in. Hey, welcome back to Ciao Bella. Today I'm sitting in a beautiful, beautiful garden in a castle in the Salento, the very, very heel of Puglia. And I'm with Diana Bianchi, the co-owner and founder with Massimo d'Amore at Castello di Ugento. Hello.
Hi.
Well, thank you for having me as a guest this morning.
Thank you for coming and seeing us and visiting us.
Well, I can't tell you, there's nothing more suggestive and picturesque than sitting in a castle's garden in the morning. It's beautiful.
Well, thank you.
I'm so excited to have you on Ciao Bella today because we are in an area that I particularly love of Italy. We're in Puglia. I think a lot of people have heard of Puglia. Maybe some of you guys have visited Puglia. A lot of people have heard the cities of Lecce, of Foggia, of Taranto, of Bari, of course. But we are in the very, 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 very tip of the heel. So, Italy's the boot and this is the heel in a kind of fairy tale area. And I think, when you study the history of Puglia, which, I don't know many people who've actually had on their course curriculum the history of Puglia, but it does, you do a quick study and it sounds like a fairy tale because we go all the way back to I can't even pronounce it.
The Messapians.
The Messapians, yes. And I was laughing this morning because I was in the shower and I was going through a list. I was like Messapians, Greeks, Romans, and then I was like, oh my God, Byzantines, Normans, Christians, Aragonese, Angevins, and then there's probably more. And then we have to throw in the unification of Italy. I mean,
yes,
it's a fairy tale. just talking about the history.
So one of our art historians actually once qualified this area of Italy as the Europe of Italy and of Europe.
Oh my goodness.
It is true that we have had, this is a land of crossroads between the East and the West, but also from the North. We do have a lot of historical relevance in this area, going back, as you said, to the Messapians, which is a civilization from about 800, 700 before Christ. In Ugento proper, they had an important stronghold of the civilization. We can compare them a little bit to the Etruscans, who are farther up north in Italy. And they were a civilization which was reaching between Greece and Sicily and all of this area, which then became also known as La Magna Grecia. So from then on, we have had always invaders, visitors, and mostly, however, I would say, gentle invaders, except perhaps the Turks. At some point we have had some Byzantine, invasions. But in general, the Pugliese people, and I would say especially down here in Salento, are very welcoming, especially because they really have had a lot of visitors from Orient and
from East and West.
Absolutely.
It's funny. Yesterday, my husband, daughter, and I we went all the way to the tip of the tip. We went to the Finibus today, the end of the world, so to speak, or the end of the earth, according to the Romans. And we went to Santa Maria de Leuca, and I was just laughing because it was really it's the most southern southeastern point in Italy. And it really was the outpost for the Christian civilization on some level, for the ancient Romans. And it was the outpost of east to west from what they knew at the time.
Absolutely. And then, of course, aside from also the east and the west, if we fast forward into the 12th century, end of the 11th, we see also arriving from the north, the Normans. So the Normans definitely came all the way down here. We actually uncovered a very remarkable a tower under our feet that had been hidden for about 700 years here at Castello.
You know what? why don't you, that's a great story, and I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I think that's a great point to talk about where we are. So we could just quickly tell people a little bit, not even quickly, I would love for you to share with us the story of Castello di Ugento, because we're not just sitting in a castle, we're sitting in a story.
We're sitting in a story, and Castello di Ugento is in fact the castello that belonged to the D'Amore family since 1643. Massimo D'Amore, who's my partner in business and in life as well, was visiting his grandfather, who was the last of the D'Amore to really live here up until his death in 1979. So Massimo grew up in these gardens, in this castello, especially during holiday. And he had a real desire to bring it back to life at some point. He had an international career in corporate business, traveled a lot, and lived away from Italy for about 30 years, and had this dream of restoring this castle.
The family came here in 1643, and this was a fortress. I mean, I don't know if hai visto la scuola di cucina o no? So you will see on that side is really a fortress. The walls are 7 meters deep, etc. Because this was a fortress, was not a palace at all. And then, so they bought this whole area. They became feudal lords, and obviously it was one of the farther away territory from the city of Naples, which was the capital. Because all of Sicily and Calabria were easily accessible by boat. So they were taking the boat to Palermo, they were taking the boat to Messina or to Reggio Calabria. To come here was only a land trip. So with all the alias of weather, the mules, etc., etc. So it was a hardship trip, lasting several days, etc. So at one point, they decided to turn this into a palace, basically. And this really transformed the place, because if this had already still been a defense castle, as he knows much better than me, there would be only little windows,
Right.
narrow staircases, there would be no courtyard, no garden, nothing.
No kind of recreation.
It's like many castles, Otranto, Gallipoli, places like this, where you cannot live inside. I mean, they're not made for comfort. So here, our luck is that in between 1650 and 1700, this huge construction site lasted almost 50 years, and they transformed it into a palace. So they could really spend a long time here. And then it became the main residency, and at one point the Palazzo d'Amore in Napoli was sold. Because they were coming from Napoli. Yeah. And there is still a palazzo. It's still called Palazzo d'Amore, but it was not the family anymore. Yeah, because this became the main residence. Yes.
When did that would have been in the 1700s?
Yeah, I think it's end 1700. Yes, or beginning 1800. There was still one branch was there, but then at the end they sold it. Yeah. And so this is one of the stories. Another story is that, now let me get it right because it's unusual. So there were these two brothers, and one was here and one was in Ruffano, which is another city nearby, 20 kilometers from here. And then the one in Ruffano died. So there was his wife with two daughters, and not long time after, the wife of the one in Ugento died. And then in order to keep the estate together, the one of Ugento married one of the daughters of his brother. So yes, which is unusual as yes, and so, but this is how they kept the estate together.
Diana was telling me that it took 20 years and 20 different atti notarile, right?
18 in 20 years, yes.
That is pretty interesting. I mean, that's stamina. It is. It's tenacity right there.
Tenacity.
I mean,
difficult to buy from family members. Much
And
easier,
some were not. Not
much
all were
easier
family.
from strangers.
Yeah.
I could imagine. Actually, I
Not
can't.
all of them, obviously, but it was difficult. Yeah.
So what was you said your grandfather lived here till 1979?
Yeah, he passed. First, there were both of my parents, and my grandmother passed away early, and he stayed here until his final days, and it was in 1979. Yeah.
And so this space was
Upstairs he was living upstairs.
and he just parked his car right here.
Yeah, this was his garage. Yes.
And this was, and for you, you came to visit this as a child. Because I know
Yeah.
you didn't live here, but
No, we didn't live here. My mom was from here. She spent a few years here, but then we were coming to see the grandfather first with the whole family, especially in summer, a couple of Christmas, but it was very cold because to heat up the Castello was and here it's not. It doesn't really get too cold, but it gets humid, so you have to warm up. And then alone, I came here. There are a few pictures of me in Taranto, because I was taking the train to Taranto. He would come to pick me up and then spend some time here. And that's it. But we couldn't live here because back then there was no school. I mean, you had to live in Lecce. I mean, here you couldn't go to school. Nothing. It was very, very basic. I mean, very rudimentary. It's and that's it. And then he passed away in '79, and then he was basically closed for 30 years until I met this young lady in New York.
La follia.
And
La follia.
we first fell in love with each other, and then we fell in love with this place. When I was here as a kid with my grandfather, it looked very nice. I mean, I didn't realize that it was not so perfect, but it looked very nice. Then the last time I was here was for his funerals in '79, and it was already started to be run down. And then I might have come back one more time afterwards, and it was very run down. And somehow I started developing this idea.
So we are at home. We are in a place that we have brought back to life in the last 5 years. We started the works in 2014. We opened up as a boutique hotel in 2018 with a fine dining restaurant and also a culinary school, a very both professional and for amateurs. So it is a property that we're very proud and happy to have instilled life into again, and moving it forward into the 21st century, carrying on our shoulders all these 400 years of history, of family history, but I would say 900 years of history since we found the vestige under the floor of our current dining room, which is the Norman Tower and the arches of the initial fortress that the Normans created using the Messapian blocks from 700 before Christ. So we're realizing that we really are in a very, very antique area, but we have propelled it into the 21st century.
So Massimo's family, they've been here for 400 years, più o meno.
Yes.
And I remember, you were telling me earlier that initially they came, and I think Massimo was also telling me it was like a gift from the King of Naples, I believe.
Yes, well, they were feudatari, so it's under the feudal system. They acquired the land and they acquired the whole area, a very vast area. There had been other noble families before them, but they were two brothers who arrived, one in Ugento, the other one in another town, and so they established their presence here. They were cultivating the land. They were actually also administering, justice in the area that they were controlling, and this was by decree of the King of Naples, and then they loved it so much that after commuting, I would say for about 10 years or perhaps more, they decided to then stay and make their their home here and live here.
Because initially the structure you were mentioning
Exactly.
was a fortezza, was
Exactly.
a fortress. So
They-
it wasn't
hospitable at all. No, it was really a fortress for defense, and for storage and for all things that required simply to have large spaces to store the land, to store what they were cultivating and defend themselves. So when they actually decided that they wanted to make this home, make it their home, they embarked on about 20, 30 years of work, little by little, and they transformed the upper floor, the higher parts of this castello into a palazzo residenza. So they brought in their architects from Naples. They created a very beautiful scalone con architetti napoletani, where they introduced the Barocco Napoletano, which is different from the Barocco that you would find in Lecce. And very, very beautiful. And then they created all these saloni with frescoes, which actually play a lot on their name, Amore, d'amore. And so there are a lot of very beautiful stories being told with famous and illustrious couples. We have Cleopatra and Antony, we have others, and Lucrezia, and we have a lot of beautiful mythological stories and cupids all over. So it's really a castello d'amore, dei principi d'amore di Ugento.
Can you give me an idea, or give our listeners an idea of the size of the space? Because I see one bastion.
Well, we have about 4,500 square meters of property of castello inside, and the garden is about 1,500 square meters. So it is very large, very vast, but the living area and the space that our guests come to in the boutique hotel is quite cozy, because it all evolves around the courtyard. I think the life of the castello was very much around the courtyard, and it still is. And so between the garden, which is one of our salotti, and the courtyard, which is another one, and then the inside spaces, no one feels too dispersed. We all feel quite cozy.
And I'm a big fan of bastions. I love walls. I love ancient walls. I love medieval walls. I even like Renaissance walls. I'll go as far as getting a little bit later in life, but I love staring at that bastion. How many bastions are in this castle?
Well, these bastions that you're seeing, these torri, are the ones you're looking at right now. They were from the Angevin period, so 1300s. We had two of them. One, however, had fallen in disrepair after an earthquake in the 1800s. It is still half that size. But those that we're seeing from the garden, and you can see those from a lot of views of Castello di Ugento, were then transformed, however, by the Aragonese later. So those are actually, the one here in the garden is still very, very beautiful. You will also notice that most of the walls of Castello have not really been injured by wars and by any kind of attacks. This was a rather peaceful area. The Norman tower that's below our feet in the dining hall is also very intact, as what we discovered, that double arch where the gate was in between it and the horses would come in, and that too was in very good shape when in the 1300s they decided to cut off half of the tower and cover it up so that they could keep building the castle upward.
And I thought it was fascinating when Massimo was telling us so there's this incredible, when you go into the dining area, they've opened up, there's an excavation site that is part dining area and part excavation site. Archeo nerds like myself will love it. And you see the side, this beautiful curve of a Norman tower, and you see the original, I guess it would have been one of the original gate entrances, without the actual grill, but you get to see that little slice where the grill would have been. It's fabulous. But I asked her, I said, well, what was here before? Like, what was this? How come this was covered up? Well, Massimo was saying his grandfather that this was the garage area. How did you guys discover it?
So it was actually one of the storage areas that you can see when you look at images of Castello. You'll see this beautiful courtyard, and everything that was around the courtyard were mainly storage areas, because the piano nobile was reserved for living. and the bottom area was storage. So over the 20th century, however, when obviously after the war a lot of things changed and the family was less, they were less prominent in terms even of how they were living, clearly they used a lot of those areas also, one example, as a garage. So we were, in fact, where we are now dining used to be a garage, and no one had any idea until we discovered this in 2015 through the works, that below that area, and it would actually continue into the courtyard, is that very beautiful tower and double arch. So we realized it when they started working on the floors in order to isolate them properly from humidity, because everything we've done here has been a restauro conservativo in order to bring back the property as it was conceived, but with modern sustainable technology so as to preserve and avoid that any other future damage would be brought. So clearly humidity is a big problem in these kind of monuments. So as we were working at insulating the floors, we realized that below our feet there was something very hard and important and huge blocks of so everybody stopped. They carved out enough area to understand what it was. We brought in the sovrintendenza, worked very nicely with them. Our architects, of course, our Studio Carafa Guadagno from Caserta are fabulous architects in historical
so you guys
monuments.
brought Neapolitan architects just
We
like
did
did in the
too.
1600s.
Yes, our whole project has been managed by them. They're wonderful. And I salute the Donna Rosa Carafa and Vincenzo Guadagno and Enrico Carafa. It was a wonderful team. And they clearly then helped us understand how we could excavate that whole area and bring it to light. And what we decided to do was then to put a glass floor where we now have tables, and so it's very suggestive to have dinner in our restaurant.
It's incredible, and something I learned yesterday was that structure. You said you and Massimo were explaining to me that there's a round tower and then a square.
There are other, yes, because during the during the later, we believe clearly Federico II, Frederick of Swabia, was obviously very prominent in Puglia. He was also known as the son of Puglia. He was raised in in Sicily from the north. He came through his mother. He was raised in Sicily, but he also loved Puglia very much. And we obviously have proof that he was farther north in Puglia. Castel del Monte is one of the beautiful castelli attributed to him that he designed. No one knows really if he actually slept in it, but it's this very enigmatic castello, but that is absolutely should be on people's itinerary. But he certainly it is believed that he also came this far south. And what was typical of his architecture was a mix of square towers, which we have in the Aula Magna. That is a very beautiful, large, very high built square tower, and round towers. So there is a mix of this in his architecture. And we have another one that we would like to work on also, where we are working on our wine cellar.
There is such, when you tell these stories and you talk about Federico II, who was German, born in Sicily, yes. One of the things I think that impresses me the most about Puglia is this, like you were saying, this international history for centuries, and it's also amazing when I think about it, because I start thinking about Italian history and the Kingdom of the Two Sicilies or the Kingdom of Naples, which was not just simply a place. It was almost like an empire completely in the south, and that you can throw in the Crusades. Yes. I mean, there's so much, and I think here there's so much to see. And I wanted to ask you about that, your relationship, yours and Massimo's relationship with the Salento. How do you transmit, I guess, Puglia and this internationalism, like it's the local internationalism, I don't know if you can call it that, to your guests that come here who have never, I mean, I feel like I have to take like a year-long course in the history of Puglia.
Well, we obviously we tend to recommend that travelers come and spend some time down here without rushing off too quickly. I would say that because some travelers like to be able to say that they've visited a lot of little different areas, and that's fine, but I think the way travel is actually moving forward anyway, especially after this year's realization that time is a precious gift we all have, and that digging deeper in your travels when you're in a place is definitely worth it. So when people come with us and stay ideally 4 to 5 nights at least. They really, we help them organize as well their tours around the Basso Salento, where there are a myriad of little towns, each one with its history, with its own piazza, with its beautiful cathedral, with its church, with its Baroque art. Galatina, which is about 25 minutes from us, has one of the most beautiful cathedrals with frescoes that are just stunning and is definitely worth a visit. We have the town of Specchia, we have Santa Maria di Leuca, we have others, Tricase. There are so many down here that one should ideally stay put so as to be able to understand all the different people who have also been through this area. We still have small villages down here where Greco is spoken, which is a form of Greek language, and some of the older generations still speak it and actually keep transmitting it to their children. So it really is a very, very rich area of Italy there because of its geographical position. And we like to take our time with our guests. I think when they come and they settle in, they're clearly taken back by the history of the property. We tell our stories. We help them understand, even, and then at the same time we guide them through the area, so they can have a very good sense of Puglia by also just staying put a few more days. I think we kind of like to recommend that. Of course, we're always happy when anyone comes, even just for a 2-day stay, but there's a lot to do. And then, of course, our culinary offering. We like to indulge them also in the flavors of Puglia. Puglia is very vast. I would like to perhaps remind your listeners that Puglia goes 500 kilometers from north to south, and it has 750 kilometers of coast. So it's very much a
500
sea.
kilometers.
Yes, because the northern tip of Puglia is actually more north than Napoli.
Oh, wow.
Napoli is at the level of Bari, and Puglia keeps going up towards Foggia. So 500 kilometers is a very long. So you have different areas in Puglia, but each one has different, characteristics. When I was growing up in Italian school, we referred to Puglia as Le Puglie. It has now passed on to become more La Puglia.
So if
but
everybody
in terms
can hear the difference, Le Puglie is in the plural.
Yes, because it was le tavoliere delle Puglie. La Tavoliera delle Puglie, because it's like a tavola. The Apennine go through Calabria, and but to come over to Puglia, once you cross over the Apennine, it's all very flat. So it's Tavoliere delle Puglie is the way we learned in my generation how to the region of Puglia, and there was a lot from north to south. Basso Salento is certainly the one that has developed more recently in terms of tourism. We're keeping it very simple down here. We're trying to hopefully also, given the lessons also from perhaps over tourism in other regions of farther north in Italy, I think the choice of administration as to keep it as plain as it has been, but allowing guests to get the sapore della Puglia without ruining it. For instance, all of our coast now you cannot build anymore. It's Parco Naturale, natural reserve. So we do feel that between now and 20 years, hopefully the landscape will still be the way we see it now. The flavors will be unchanged. So it allows guests to really feel and understand the culture when they're here.
We've been talking a lot about experiential travel, and those are discussions that I've been part of in different forums, and you brought it up lightly, how you're seeing this evolution of travel, investing more time in a place. I'd love to know, for you, what it is about the Basso Salento that can't be missed, that must be seen, or even eaten, if you feel like sharing.
Well, I'm very moved when I get to the tip of the hill. For me, standing up at the lighthouse of Santa Maria di Leuca and overlooking the sea, where geographically, not historically, geographically, the two seas meet, for me is very, very emotional, because I find that there's something very spiritual, very beautiful. The light is always amazing there, and you have the two seas. One is often calmer than the other, and they kind of clash together. Now, I will make this little addendum to my speech on the finibus terrae, because in maritime rules, the two seas actually meet at Otranto. So the very precise listeners may say, but in fact the two seas meet, because that is also where geographically they met historically, okay? But when you look at the map, it's actually Santa Maria di Leuca. So I think being so close to the end of the heel, we're very lucky for that. All of our guests get to enjoy that view. The port, as you said, is as if it has stopped in the 1950s. We have all these beautiful Liberty villas from the beginning of the century. It has not been at all overly built or attacked by any kind of commercial tourism, and there's a lot of respect for the area. So I really love being close to that. We go there frequently. I also like very much the towns, the smaller ports on the Adriatic, and Gallipoli very close to us. So of course during the heat of the month of August, there may be more buzz around those towns. It gets rather busy, but what I like to recommend to all of your listeners too is that just like Tuscany or Liguria or Piemonte, people travel there all year long. We must get away from this image of Puglia just being a beach resort area. It is beautiful all year long. We are in fact open all year except for a few months, January, February. Most of the time we close to let our teams have a bit of holiday, but the light, the colors, the weather, and everything you can do in this area is definitely worth visiting in the mid-season. So I just get very excited when I hear people interested in this area, because I really do think that it offers both cultural visits, culinary experiences, beautiful wines from Puglia that are becoming more and more discovered, and of course very modern, contemporary, comfortable hotellerie. We ourselves have fitted our hotel very 21st century. I'd like to say one word about sustainability, which I think is very important. It was also part of our mission from the beginning. So more and more we are trying to be, to offset our carbon footprint. And so I think Puglia and Basso Salento is working very nicely to preserve its history, its beauty, its antiquity, moving it forward into the 21st century with a good equilibrium.
Well, I think it's done I think you both have done an incredible job of tying in its past with and bringing it to the 21st century. To let everybody know, it's really quite easy to get here. I think sometimes it looks a little bit daunting, but let's just pretend you come to Rome and you decide, you know what, I really don't want to be here. Or you planned it, which I would suggest planning in advance. You can drive here. How long does it take to drive?
Actually, it's driving really from Rome is about 5 hours. There's also a fast train that is about 5 hours and a half.
Know.
But that's because it's mainly very fast until Bari, and then it slows down a little bit. But we should be getting higher speed transportation soon. And then it's 1 hour, not even an hour flight from Bari. You fly from Rome. You fly into Brindisi to come to us very easily.
Oh, that's right. You can fly to Brindisi.
Brindisi is much easier, and Brindisi is an hour away from Castello, so that's easy.
I mean, it's so easy to get to.
And even from other European cities, we're very well served from Swiss cities, because there was a lot of Swiss Pugliesi who emigrated to Switzerland, so they're served very well, both from Zurich and Geneva, Paris, London, Amsterdam. All these big cities fly into Bari and Brindisi. So that's quite easy, really. It is.
I think it's so much easier than I imagined. And I think one of the things I think is beautiful is actually just driving through all of Puglia, because the terrain does change. And you get down to you get down to the Salento, and it's what's amazing is you can be driving on the road. There's one part of the highway I noticed that you can look and you can see the coast from either side. Right. Which I think a lot of people, they don't realize how coastal Italy is, and there's no better place to see it than when you're in the Salento.
Right.
And it's just an incredible drive, because the terrain changes, and then you see, you get on the outskirts of the big cities like Bari or Brindisi, and then all of a sudden there's this cute little Baroque town. Right. I mean, I don't even. To me, it's definitely one of the most beautiful places to drive around. So I just wanted to let everybody know that that's what you should be doing, I think. Well, it was wonderful to speak with you. I really had a great afternoon. Yesterday, we've had a beautiful morning here. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much, and I thank you also on behalf of Massimo, who I'd like to just again salute, because I think he definitely is the one who had this vision, who had the courage to start this whole avventura, and I followed him blindly. So it really is a little bit of a storia d'amore here in this Castello d'Amore.
I love that. It's a storia d'amore. It's a love story from the D'Amores.
And we were very happy to have you, Erica. So do come back.
I will be coming back. I can't wait. I'll be coming back when it's not hot. I mean, I love the heat.
Right.
So and actually, to me, I've noticed there's no heat here. It's that breeze is incredible.
Today it's beautiful and it changes. We do get a lot of winds, so the heat disperses rapidly. But come in the mid-season,
I want to explore
a different feeling.
A complete different feeling. Well, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Hey, if you want to find out more about Castello di Ugento, visit castellodiugento.com and visit Ciao Bella, my website, where you can find out more about Puglia and Castello di Ugento.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Ciao Bella. If you'd like to know more about today's guest, please visit ciaobella.co and click on the podcast link, or go directly to ciaobella.co/podcast. Want more Italy? You can find all my episodes on iTunes and Spotify and Stitcher. When you have time, subscribe to iTunes and rate the podcast. What are you waiting for? And if you want to be part of the podcast, email me or DM me your Italy questions. To learn more about me and my work, go to my website, ericafirpo.com, and follow my Italy adventures on Instagram at ericafirpo. Ciao, Bella! And a very big thank you and hug to Massimo and Disc to Disc Studios, the producers of Ciao Bella, who continue to make me sound and feel great.